Hey, welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Brudzinski. Somewhere on that split screen is Republican Town Councilor Joe Marrone. Joe, welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Appreciate your coming back. A lot of courage, good sport, all that.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be on the virtual show.
Yeah, the virtual show. Hey, last night, February 9, you guys had a town council meeting.
Yes.
And one of our favorite subjects was up for discussion, community pool.
Yes.
It was put on the agenda by Democratic Town Councilor Vinny Testa. Walk us through what happened, and what your takeaway is, and what viewers should expect coming up with, if anything, with regard.
Yeah. So I think Vinny Testa brought it up because he's concerned that the pool's going to die as a project. So there's a pool committee, and the council liaison to the pool committee is Chris Shortell. And so he sort of gave us his report of what the pool committee's doing. But in the end, it doesn't really matter what the pool committee's doing, because if we're not going to find the money or the political will to do the project, then the rest of it's not really going to matter. So it kind of went around the room, and they kind of took a straw poll of all the councilors to see who was for and who was against. So, without voting on it, I guess my sort of takeaway is that there's 6 votes for and maybe 3 that are either waffling or against. But there's definitely 6 people that were supportive of the idea.
So the time has come, Joe. Name names.
So it's easier to name the 3 that I think are not comfortable with it, right? So Christina Tata is number 1. I don't think she wants to spend the money on it. I don't think she sees the value in a project of this size. All right. Craig Fishbein has been sort of skeptical of the whole project all along. I mean, my gut would be that he's not going to want to spend the money on it either. Because that's sort of his, where he comes from, but he wasn't at the meeting last night. And then the other one that was kind of quiet about it was Vinny Cervoni. So, and he hasn't told me that he's against the project. I don't think he's against it. I think it's a money thing.
How about the mayor? Did he tip his hand as to where he was?
So, yeah, I mean, in a way of speaking, he did, because the mayor indicated that he was very non-committal in his comments. So he's concerned about the economy. He's concerned about the size of the project. He's concerned about, getting it done during the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. So his approach was, let's wait a couple of months and see where we are and see if we're ready to move forward at that point. So sometimes, if I can give my commentary on it, I think, in government, when you say, let's wait a couple of months, look at it again, you just kick the can down the road and you hope in a couple of months something else takes priority and you can just kind of move past it. So he was especially non-committal, I guess is how I would describe his take on it.
Yeah, I watched his comment, or I listened to his comments carefully, and we're going to have them in a clip coming up.
Okay.
In just a couple of minutes. I got most of his comments, and it was sort of the mayor being the mayor. He says, I think year after year, these troubled times, or these uncertain times, or this economy. I mean, it's always the same code, which is another way of saying that he's not for it. That's how I interpret it. But folks can, when they hear it, the video, or they see the video, they can make up their own minds. And then Vinny Cervoni seemed to adopt that, I thought. He said it was a timing thing, like what would be a better time? Maybe the 12th of never,
Right.
Never might be the right time, or, no time is the perfect time.
Right.
Joe, you mentioned the pool committee. Who is the pool committee?
So the pool committee was made up of members of the public and members of the rec department that did the work to get the plans for the pool plan.
Yeah.
The splash pad and the lap lanes and the smaller pool and so on.
Okay. And what's your projection? What do you handicap this for me? Are we going to see a pool open ever?
So that's a great question. Yeah, and it's funny because this is a bit of an aside, but I hate the talk about the tough economic times we're in, because it's true. I mean, people are out of work, but for government at every level, state, local, and federal, governments are rigging in money right now. And so not that this means that we should spend more, right? But times for the state, certainly in the town, we're in a fatter time now than we've been in a long time due to the pandemic. So I think if you're going to strike, you strike while the iron is hot. But you asked me for a prediction, and if I had to predict, I would say that I think this gets kicked down the road for a couple of months, unless the council can keep it alive, and then it eventually goes nowhere.
Well, let me give you my prediction, which I've shared with you off camera in preparing for this show, but also I've said it on the show a couple of times with Brother Shortell when he was on. I don't think community pool will open ever again. That's my prediction. But in a minute, I want your reaction to my comments. It seemed to be the consensus of the councilors that the pool should not open this year for a combination of reasons.
Right.
People might be reluctant to turn out, in a community kind of a setting, given the pandemic. Maybe the state of Connecticut Health Department would give guidance that pools like that should not open.
Right.
Michelle Bjorkman from the Park and Rec Department said, look out, we may not be able to get lifeguards in time. But also there is a cost to reopening the pool, and someone called it like a dry run or a dry opening. The repairs are needed even before you start the water flowing.
Right.
Let me stop there and get your reaction, or maybe a quick review of those sort of issues. What were the obstacles to reopening the pool this summer?
Well, so there's the known issues, right? So one is they have to paint the surface of the pool. They have a cleaning crew that needs to clean the restroom facilities. They know they need to replace the chlorine tanks. And then there's some other piping work and some other miscellaneous items, somewhere to the tune of just under $30,000. And that's the known work that needs to be done to get the pool going. Beyond that, there could be any number of other issues that they could find, plumbing and otherwise, that could also require remediation before the pool opened.
Was there anyone pushing to have the pool open this summer?
I didn't see anyone that was pushing to have the pool open right away.
Yeah.
I think that between the pandemic and everything else, I think there's too many what ifs, right? And then when Michelle Bjorkman said the issues about lifeguards, that was sort of like the final argument, the death knell of opening the pool right away. Yeah.
So if it's not going to open this year, then I think if the pool doesn't get rebuilt, per last year's $6-7 million cost estimate, if it doesn't get rebuilt, then I doubt it's going to be open just for the summer in 2022. That means 2 years without a pool.
Right.
And if it's not open for 2 years, I think it's more likely that everyone just forgets about it. If they don't forget about it, maybe they wring their hands about the additional startup costs being put into an old pool that needs to be rebuilt. So that's 50% of my assessment.
Right.
So, the mayor is not for this. I think we have a repeat of last year where he's not going to approve a bid. And he is just standing in the way. And as long as he has 3 votes behind him, I don't think the pool ever gets open. Your thoughts on my thoughts?
So I can't necessarily disagree with your assessment. I think it's up to the council to try to keep it alive. I think if we're going to see any kind of pool development, it's going to come from the council side. I think Vinny Testa, I think it was a smart move to keep it on the agenda, to keep us talking about it. Maybe one of the 3 that are sort of on the fence or knows can be swayed depending on the circumstances.
Yeah, but how keeping it alive is not the same as rebuilding a pool. So the only way the council, I think, can initiate this is during the budget process and put money for the pool into the budget. Hope the mayor, cooperates and puts it out to bid if that's the council's wishes. But if the council puts it in the budget, I see a veto. I see a veto coming. Now you need 7 votes.
Right. Well, and the thing is, even if it's in the budget, the mayor doesn't have to ultimately spend the money on it.
Right.
So it's just, we budget for a lot of things that we don't end up buying. So
yeah,
there's really no way to force his hand to spend the money.
Yeah. And so I don't think we're going to see a community pool. Just a fun fact for us. The original appropriation for the architectural services, engineering services, original appropriation was $625,000. According to the monthly financial report, $414,000 has been spent, meaning if the pool isn't rebuilt, doesn't go out to bid again, according to the specs that were drawn up last year, $414,000 is wasted. And that should be factored in, to decision making. If we don't resurrect these plans and put it out to bid, it's like 415,000 just light a match to those dollar bills and up in smoke. There is an encumbrance of $186,000, meaning of the $625,000, the town is thinking or hoping that $186,000 might be spent on this architectural firm if it's ever built, if the town ever goes out to bid and the project gets underway. But meanwhile, that $186,000 that's encumbered is sort of in limbo. The town doesn't want to spend it, but they do want to spend, it's sort of
right.
And then in addition to that, there's another 24,000 left over in that budget. Let's round it up to 200,000 that is locked up currently in our hands, but kind of locked up, and the decision is paralyzing us with respect to that money. Hey, let's play that video.
Okay.
And so the context is, this is about 4 or 5 minutes, and I took maybe a 35-minute discussion and I compressed it into about 5 minutes. So this is a collage. It's, comments spliced together. And I captured, I think, every counselor except Vinnie Cervoni who had something to say about it. You included, Joe. You're in there.
Looking forward to it.
You're the best coming up. The mayor starts out, and there were two points of discussion here, and it's important to understand that. One discussion was, should the pool open this summer? And the other point was, should we rebuild the pool? And those topics are sort of mingled together. So let's watch that. Let's watch that video.
Very difficult to be able to plan what we may be able to do in another month, let alone try to figure out exactly what the conditions will be in June and then July. That's as far as I'm relating to trying to open the pool this summer. The project in general, I think it's a similar issue. We really need more stability. It's a large project. It's a multi-million-dollar project. I think we need to have a better feel for an economy and society being more open than what is the case right now.
So my general feeling before coming to this meeting, and even more so after hearing the figures tonight, is that we as a town, I think, are very famous for throwing good money after bad. And we've probably been 10 years or longer that we've been doing that for this pool. And every single year, Park and Rec is the first to admit that you could turn on the water after a winter in April and discover that the pool is not at all salvageable. And so I, for one, am completely against spending money on the pool as it is. We are living in a time with the lowest interest rates, and the investment for this town should be for redoing it. And we've talked about pre-budget season, taking money that we have in reserves and applying it to a project. This is that project. I'm all in that it should just be done. And again, interest rates are low.
So I'm going to agree a lot with what Councilor Morgenstein said, but I think we're at a good point now where we're not even sure we can open, or we should open the pool. We're not even sure that it will work if we open. Our evaluations came back strong, so we are on solid feet. Wallingford, if you're betting on a horse, it's a strong horse to bet on, but I don't think this is a bet. This is just solid planning. And going out to bid during a pandemic like this, there will be aggressive and competitive numbers coming back to try and get us to move forward. I think this is exactly the time and the place to do it. So I'm all good to go. I think things will be, I think it's a good time. I think it's a good time to at least put it out there again and see where we go.
And I don't think it's a smart move this year to try to open it, as much as there might be some level of use. We look to do this work this year and get the facility ready to go for next year. You're going to see a lot of pent up desire to get out, because things will hypothetically be much better at that point. A lot more vaccinations, hopefully a lot more settling down of this. And the idea would be there would be that huge demand to get out, to go do things, to be social again, even if you're still being somewhat cautious. They're going to have this great brand new facility, completely reworked. That'll be like a gem in the town. So I'm on board 2 times over to get this thing kick-started as quickly and as intelligently as we can. I don't want to rush in anything, but I want to get everything together. Let's get a nice plan together, include all the things that everybody's looking for, that the site and the facility can hold and maintain, and let's get it done.
I still support the project as I did last spring. I don't want to scale it back at all. I don't want to do I'd rather go with what Councilor Laffin Vice Chair Laffin is saying, put it out to bid again, see what comes of that.
First of all, I still think we're in economic crisis, and a lot of people are hurting. A lot of people are still out of jobs. A lot of businesses are shutting down. And so, as I agreed with the mayor a few months ago, I still agree that I don't know that this is the right time to be spending this kind of money on something that's nice, but it's not a necessity. So I do have concerns about the timing of this.
So I'd rather see the pool not open in the state that it's in. I'd rather move forward with the big project, and I'm not interested in looking at how we could rehab, what we've got now, which is kind of problematic. So that's where I stand on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There you go. I did not include comments by Vinny Testa, who put this on the agenda. He was also very much in favor of the full project, and I didn't include a short comment by Chairman Cervoni, Vinny Cervoni, who said he was a timing. He liked the project generally, but it was a timing thing. It was sort of American.
Right. The other question, it's funny because as I look at the clips, the other thing that comes to mind is what economic time were we in when we started down this road with the pool, right? Was the economy any better? I mean, were we in the land of milk and honey? I mean, things were rough then too. So it's funny how our perspectives change when we get the $6 million price tag, and suddenly now it becomes problematic.
Yeah. Well, maybe just to button this up, if the pool is ever done, the cost of it is bonded, meaning it's spread over. The cost of it is spread over, I'm going to say 20 years, but maybe it could be longer. It probably not shorter. That'd be a question to ask of the comptroller. The bond market changes, but it does change. And so the relevant number is the yearly cost for the debt service on that long-term loan. And then the other relevant cost is, how does that impact the tax bill of the average homeowner? What is it costing per year, to break it down into real numbers? 6 or 7 million sounds like, oh man, that's an awful lot of money. But when you bond it out at extremely low interest rates, my position is, and Joe, I think yours is too, it's really not that much money for a great.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
No.
So let's move on. Let's change the subject.
Okay.
And what's happening now, I guess, I'm not really sure, is an effort to start a referendum, a successful referendum to reverse the vote of the Wallingford Town Council, which a couple of weeks ago voted to approve parking lot projects in the upper part of downtown, one behind Simpson Court, and the other is at the end of Wallace Avenue. I like to call it the Green Kaplan area because most people know it by that name. Joe, what was your position on that? What was your position on whether they were separate projects? What was your position on the money? What was your position on the quality of the parking lots? Just give it the whole shtick.
So, all right. So my take is, so the first question was, is it separate projects, right? I mean, I think you could call it one project, but you know, in as much as the Brothers parking lot is one project, this, you know, Wallace could be a second project, the other one could be a third project. So I think there was some harangue in the beginning about getting the numbers for the two. What were the numbers? What would it cost to do each of the lots? And obviously the Simpson lot has a lot more work that needs to be done, right? The Wallace lot's pretty much ready to go. It's already been graded. There's millings down. They just really need to do like a final grading and then pave. The Simpson lot requires drainage, lighting, you know, resurface the whole thing. So there's a lot more work involved in that project. So they're not going to be done by the same, you know, Public Works, I guess, can do all the work that needs to be done in the Wallace lot, and then they'll have their contractor pave it. The Simpson lot will be put out to bid. So, because they're not really prepared to take that on. So, I mean, is it one project? I mean, I guess you could call anything, right? If you rehab all the schools, you could call it one project, but, you know, because the money's coming from one place, I guess. But it's not really one project.
Why am I asking? This became a big deal.
This did become a big deal.
Tell me why it became a big deal.
So when the question was asked by Councilwoman Tata, whether this could be, she wanted the costs on the two projects. And the mayor got a little upset at the discussion of it because this is one project, they don't have a dollar amount. So then Councilor Fishbein put in a Freedom of Information request for the cost of the lots, and the town provided the cost for each of the lots. So the Wallace lot, and you know, I don't remember the exact numbers, but was around 140,000, I believe. And then of the 400,000 for the whole project. So the Simpson lot, obviously the scope of work is a lot larger, so there's a lot more that needs to be done. You know, it costs more money.
So for a short period of time, the cost of Simpson, the Simpson Court parking lot, as broken out from the other two, was a secret. The mayor had it, didn't want to reveal it. And the cost of the Wood and Kaplan lots, the Wallace lots, that was a secret.
Right.
The mayor had the numbers, didn't want to give it. We commented about that on the show, and I don't know if I said this, my thought was, this is so dysfunctional, you know, just come up with the numbers. But finally they did come out. Let me shift a little bit. So the Simpson Court lot is now estimated to be 300,000. Back in 2011, it was 500,000.
Right.
What's the difference as far as you know? Not the engineering specs, but conceptually, what's the difference?
Yeah, so conceptually, there's not a lot of difference between what there is now and what there was before. I think it's differences in the economy, and I know they've scaled back some minor parts of the project in terms of drainage and revisions to how some of it's going to be engineered. But there's not in the total project. I don't see a lot of difference between this one and the last one. Okay.
Well, do we spend public money on private land, Joe?
Well, I think in this case we do. I think I voted for it. I think that is it private property? Yes, it is, right? But it's been used by the public for a number of years. So I'm not saying that the public takes it over, but I think with the lease, now the public has the ability to park there at least for the next 25 years. So I think it makes sense to secure, you know, people complain about public parking in Wallingford more than any other single issue, right? So to me, if you're trying to address what people's number one concern is, this is a good way to get at that problem.
So your position on the referendum then is what?
So my position on the referendum is, I mean, I would vote to whatever outcome would give us the parking lot.
Okay. So let's switch our focus. Across the street, in back of Archie Moore's, the Wallace lots, the Wood and Kaplan lots. There was a comment made by a member of the public and also by Christina Tata on it was a Mike show that these are not the exact words of either one. I'm just sort of giving my own summary of it. Wouldn't it have been nice if the Wood and Kaplan parking lots could have been nicer with better lighting and more amenities and be more attractive and be more the centerpiece of the, well, you can't call that a centerpiece, but the featured parking lot.
Right.
We'll spend a little money, make it a little better. If that was an option, what would your position have been?
Well, I guess it would come down to the costs. To be honest, I agree with the administration. I think it's a parking lot that's sort of between buildings, right? You have people's backyards on one side, and then the other side, you're looking at the back of the church and the back of some other buildings, the back of the police station. So I don't know what you're going to do. You know, you can add greenery and you can add more lighting, but a parking lot is supposed to be functional, right? And so anything that sort of cuts into the function or reduces the function of it, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. So I guess depending on the cost, you know, I would take a look at it, but I think I really don't have an issue with the plan as proposed.
Okay, so this was brought forward after some negotiations with the property owners, and I guess it's been bubbling for a long time. I gather you guys talked about this in executive session for a while. When are we going to see it? You must have gotten a promise. Wait, stop. You must have, you had 2 meetings, they're each 5 hours long. Right. Somewhere in that meeting, someone must have grabbed the mayor or Rob Ultramitis, you know, by the lapels. I don't mean literally, I mean figuratively, and shaking the answer out of him. When are you going to get this done? We don't want another, you know, $450,000, whatever it is, tied up in your cap non-account. Build it, build it. Give me a date and a deadline. Management by objectives. What's the answer to that?
Well, yeah, the answer is we weren't given a date. But I mean, if we're facing a referendum or an injunction or something, you know, you can't break ground and then, you know, what do you do if there's a referendum? So I think that it is held up a little bit by the threat, at least, of a referendum. But
at the time, they didn't know there was going to be a referendum. And the referendum is, you know, we'll know the answer to that pretty soon. But I think you've answered my question. No one really grabbed them by the lapels and say, is it going to be this summer or not?
Right. But, you know, unlike the pool, though, the mayor is really hot on this issue, as is, you know, the Economic Development Commission and so on and so forth. So I don't see this having this being a long drawn out project. I think we get in, we get a bid, and we get it done.
All right.
Your face says no.
Well, let's go down the hill and switch focus to the other parking lot.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, before we leave Simpson Court, I said on the last show, and I'd given some thought, I'm standing by it. If I was on the council, I would have voted in favor of the Simpson Court parking lot. Also, again, not with the same excitement and exuberance of a lot of the proponents. On balance, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. I'll do it. If it doesn't get done, it's not the end of the world. So that's my view of it. Go down the hill to the Brothers. I'm going to call it the Brothers parking lot, but I mean the proposed parking lot on all of the town-owned property in back of the old train station, that acre plus. And I think in one of my memos that I send out to folks who watch the show, and I kind of summarize and analyze, you know, the issues that we talk about, I called the vote approving the Brothers parking lot the worst decision of the year. And I think you know, because we prepare for the show off camera, that I've quietly come to regret my choice of words, in that it's the worst decision in the last 5 years. It's a terrible decision that you voted for it. We'll get your side of the story in it.
I could probably name worse decisions, but continue.
Ooh, we're going to break from our agenda. And the reason why I think it's the worst decision in the last 5 years is that it's harmful. The Simpson Court, at least you get something for it. You know, residents would then get some pleasure out of the Simpson Court parking lot. But down below, it's harmful in this sense. The acre of land that we own in back of the old train station is worth something. And I checked the assessor's records to try to get the value of land down in that area, and just crunching some numbers and making a very rough judgment. That acre was probably worth, based on assessor's records, maybe between 600,000 and 1.2 million. So the whole idea of a parking lot down there is to increase the grand list, generate taxes, generate money. So you take an asset worth, a town-owned asset, I'm going to use 600,000, it's the lower number. Do you sell it and recognize the cash? No, you don't. You take $600,000 and you burn it. You just up in smoke. And then what do? You put a parking lot on it, so it's never taxable. And then if someone ever bought it for 600,000, presumably they would do something with it, put a building on it, and that would be taxable. But do we get that tax money? No. So the rationale now becomes it supports the old train station. The old train station is not taxable. So you know, Shortell's Super Pizza restaurant goes into the old train station, and what do you get to tax? A little bit of personal property, some pizza ovens, and that's how you move the needle. To me, it made no economic sense, but it was highly hyped by the Economic Development Commission, the same group that said, give this new hotel on Route 68 a tax break of $350,000, you get nothing back. I mean, but you now have equal time.
So, you know, and I go back to what I said before, right? The number one complaint in town is the parking up and downtown. There's really as little parking as there is up, and actually I think uptown there's a lot of parking, but downtown there's very little parking. So I think that if your plan is to try to develop some of the properties around the train station, you can use that parking lot as a hub to develop some of those other properties. I think that downtown needs a lot of help in a lot of areas, right? So I think you have to start somewhere. So if this is the investment, is you start with a parking lot there and you try to branch out, you know, for, to help businesses down there, I think it makes sense. I don't have nearly the concerns about that parking lot as you do. The other thing is, you know, I thought that the building that was there already was kind of an eyesore. I think part of it was built on public land. So I think that it makes sense to try to wipe the slate clean, start with a parking lot. Could we turn around and sell it in the future? And someone could put up a, you know, a store there or something? Yeah, we certainly could. But I think for now, I think parking lot is what's needed.
Too bad. Well, I guess the light at the end of my tunnel, well, let me, before I get to the light at the end of my tunnel, because who cares anyway. Good. But, you know, this was such a controversial topic and long time in the making. First, you had to buy the Old Brothers restaurant, you know,
right,
and, you know, design it. And the way the Economic Development Commission and Tim Ryan was talking about it, this is key. This was an important project. Therefore, I know, and I have confidence that somewhere during that meeting, one of you counselors took Tim Ryan by the lapels and shook him until he or Rob Balchamitis said when it's going to be done. So when's it going to be done?
As soon as we get done with the Simpson lot. No, they haven't committed to a time for it. But, you know, and I'm going to push back on the controversial a little bit because I don't think it was controversial at all. I think when it first came up, everything was ho-hum and it was going to go forward. And then folks caught wind of it. And then there was, do we put, you know, electric vehicle charging stations in? Could it be a park? Could it be something else? But really all of the consternation came at the very tail end. And it was really not about economic development at all. It was, could we, you know, what could we do for the environment or could we make it a park? So I think there's no way that it would ever be a park because it's, you know, it's too valuable for other purposes. The EV thing is something, you know, that you could talk about, but so I didn't really see any controversy except for those types of items.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to get the last word in before we change the subject in that case as the host's prerogative.
Sure.
If it wasn't controversial, by golly, that's a shame because it should have been because it was such a poor decision. It was silly. It's how bad that decision was to take $600,000 of an asset and make it completely non-taxable forever. It's indefensible and it should have been controversial. And you're right. On the council, it seemed like most people were in favor of it. It just boggles my mind. Look, let's change it. We're not going to agree on this.
We can agree to disagree on that.
Light at the end of my tunnel. This is very important. This is extremely important. Don't go away here. Edge of your seat, please. Go lean forward. Get to the edge of your seat. Take a pen and pencil and pick it up.
Ready.
This is not, even though I lost the battle, you know, the war is not over because all you really need is a council that can think a little straighter, and reverse the decision up until the time it's built. You could, you know, the decision could be reversed. Maybe one day it will, you know, Rob Balchamitis and the mayor, you know, take too long, put it back on the agenda during budget time and that money can be put towards community pool.
Well, that, you know, and a parking lot is certainly not a big investment. I mean, most of the money was buying the property. So, you know, you could always sell it or do something else with it later on. But I'm sorry, you said you were going to have the last word and I just...
No, that wasn't the last word. It wasn't much of a last word. So I want to talk to you about money, town money, budgeting, you know, the audit came out.
Yes.
I just want to spend a little bit of time on that. When the audit came out, we reported, as did the newspapers, that the town, thanks to the Board of Education, really had a surplus. But every year I like to go through that audit and just see what the state of affairs is, the financial affairs of the town. And so we did that. You and I did that to prepare for the show. And we also
Right.
went through the town's monthly reports, which are monthly financial reports that give the status of the hundreds of accounts,
Right.
funds that the town has. It's a complicated picture. And I think the monthly report runs over 100 pages. But I pulled apart some fun fact details. So Joe, I went through those monthly reports and I was looking for what I call little pots of money. That's part of my wry humor, W-R-Y, my super wry humor. And what I call little pots of money are little sums that look underloved, underappreciated, forgotten about, not spent, and we don't know why. Little pots of money that may raise some questions. I'm not saying there's anything untoward or illegitimate or anything else.
Right.
I'm saying, wow, wouldn't it be nice to know the story of the $115,764 from the CRA distribution fund that we apparently appropriated in 2018? Wouldn't it be nice to know the story as to how hard that 115,000 is working for us? And do we still want a walkability study? And if we do, is that 10 years off? Is this on the Wallingford clock? You know, we'll never see it. And so on down the line. And some of these little pots of money have better stories than others. But I like that walkability study because when I hear that, I just roll my eyes and say, oh, brother, you know, is it our money? Or is it grant money? It's listed as if it's our money. So I'm taking the financial sheets at face value and saying, yeah, it's our money, 115,000 for a walkability study. Oh, please don't spend it on that. And I'm going to just go down the list a little bit, sort of quickly. There's more recent money, you know, from the CRA distribution fund that's sitting there that appears to be unloved. There's money up from the Covanta project. I have that in blue because I don't know enough about it, but there's almost $75,000 there. Joe, do you know anything about that? Or is that a question that we got to ask later on in the year or something? How hard?
Covanta. So, yeah. You know, I can't say specifically, but I know the Covanta project, there was money set aside to do whatever they thought they were going to do with the trash burning plant. And that, you know, and now, as you know, we're no longer burning garbage. So, yeah, I just wonder if that could be freed up. It's just a question. Now, I'm sure that if Jim Bowes or the mayor was on this phone call, they would have an excellent answer as to why we cannot use this nearly $75,000. But eventually I'd like to hear these answers because if you quickly let your eye fall to the bottom, you know, of the chart, it adds up to over 6 million, and you know, a few thousand here and a few thousand there, and sooner or later it adds up to real money. That's sort of the point. The LOCIP is a money from a state grant. It's a local capital improvement grants, and we go all the way back to 2016. Come on, it's worth a question. Why do we have leftover money from 2016? Isn't there a better use for this money? Same with the 2018 money, $208,000. And then we have some grant money, town aid. It's a road grant, a little bit left over from 2018, but as you get to 2019 and 2020, that's serious bucks. Why do we need, you know, to use our own capital non-recurring money that starts out in electric division, goes to the general fund, and ends up in the capital non-recurring fund? Why do we have to use that if we have over $800,000 in unused grant money? I mean, just a question, Joe. I don't mean to be too irreverent about it, but just a question. The 2021 money of $269,000, I'm trying to whittle the cursor on it. That's current money and all that, but let's spend this, guys. I mean, let's have some new roads and put it to good use rather than sitting in a fund. CNR projects has to do with capital and non-recurring. And this is the town's own money. Again, it starts out in the electric division, and the town appropriates a certain small slice of the electric division cash. Electric division is a division of the town of Wallingford. They're not their own company, they're a division of the town. And part of the small slice of the electric division cash comes over to the general fund. And then in the budget process, which takes both the mayor and the council,
that money ends up in the capital non-recurring fund for large ticket, big price items dealing with the improvement of land, roads, bridges, streets, schools, things like that. And a lot of old cash there. I'm going to wiggle a little cursor on the 2015 amount. That's from a townwide paving project, still sitting there 6 years later. Come on, Joe, why?
Well, okay. So, and this kind of brings me back to some of the things we talked about in the last two council meetings, right? Because the council had cut the overtime fund for public works. All right. And there's all kinds of hand wringing over, how the public work was going to pay for the overtime, where the roads going to get plowed and this and that. So, but we know at the end of last year, and we know now officially, according to our audit, that the public works was $500 and something thousand in the black at the end of the last fiscal year. So when you cut, whatever the 186,000 or we cut out of their overtime fund, that's a third of what they had left over at the end of last year. So then you look at what they start to cut. So the first thing was a plow truck, which was $90,000. We all see the need for a plow truck. The second two items were painting and lights on the senior center. Well, the senior center hasn't been open since the beginning of the pandemic and may not open for the rest of this year, depending on what happens. So then you look at these old pots of money and you have to ask yourself the question, was this money ever intended to be spent, or is this sort of a savings account that we can then dip into later on when we find that we need money for projects? So it's interesting because as you go through some of the old meeting minutes, you'll find that sometimes, and not those accounts specifically, but sometimes transfers are done from one account into another, involving small amounts of money to pay for a specific project. And sometimes it comes out of the cap and non, and sometimes it comes from other places in the current budget. So I think it's kind of like the old Italian lady that stuffs the coffee cans full of money, all over her house. And so we have these little stashes everywhere we need them when we need to come up with cash.
Yeah. I hear you. I want to go back to my little chart. I just want to finish going down the list again. You can see the capital non-recurring amounts. I included the year 2021, even though that's this year, and certainly our own public works department has not had enough time to spend it. But I just want to include all the money just to show folks what is available in addition to the town aid road grants, in addition to the LoCIP grants, the top of the chart. There's a lot of money out there dedicated to various projects. And if we had Rob Baltramitis on the show, or the mayor, or Jim Bowes, and we asked them about 2012, they'd have an excellent answer as to why we have money saved from 2012. And by the time they were done giving that explanation, you'd say, good, I'm glad we have that money unused and ready to go. From 2012, and the same 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Anyway, that's, I hope I'm revealing a little frustration I have about all this stuff. Board of Education has money saved up too in what they call phase 2 and phase 3, which are little construction and improvement projects. So they've got a little cash in the bank also. And I don't know too much about their priorities and why it's still sitting there, but I'm sure they would say, and I'm being a little playful here, well, from phase 2, we were going to have 12 doorknobs, and we haven't gotten around to it yet. We will one day. And so we need the money in the bank. But Joe, I'm a fiscal conservative. Money is taken away from taxpayers or from the town or from my organization. I want that money working and doing what it was intended to do rather than sitting around. So I think it's a good question. The next time you guys have an opportunity, why is Board of Ed phase 2, why is that sitting there? How long has it been sitting there? And do we really need to have it keep sitting there, or is there a better use for it? Not to say take it away from the Board of Ed, but there's got to be a better alternative. And they have, CRRA projects. The CRRA was a pot of money that had to do with the trash plants. And when the landfill, I do believe. And when the landfill closed, there was money owed to the participating towns. And Wallingford got a big distribution years ago, and it's been using the money from the CRA to supplement the budget. So that money is out there from these various years, allocated from the distribution fund, the CRA distribution fund. There's a little hidden sum of money in the property transfer fund that doesn't need to be there, $135,910. And there's ongoing building projects. I'm sure they have projects underway, but it'd be nice to hear what they are and how long that money is going to stay there. And you add that all up and it's over $6 million, which I affectionately call little pots of money.
Well, you know, and to your point, I mean, if there's road paving, like for 2015, there's $500,000 for road paving, right? If the roads didn't get paved, then there's ways to get it done. We could go out to, you know, put it out to bid, and we could just have someone, private contractor, you know, do what Public Works would take all summer to do, knock out in a couple of weeks, you know. So is the question becomes, though, is this money that was earmarked for something, or was this some money that is just being, you know, is this a savings account?
Well, I think on paper, it was all earmarked.
Sure.
But one has to wonder whether that earmarking system really works if this money is sitting there so stale and unloved and
right.
You know. So we had a couple of other topics that we were going to go into today, but I think we're going to run out of time. So let's make that the final topic of the night. Okay. My understanding is you're coming back next week. I don't know who allowed that, but that's what I understand. I don't know how you got by the security at the gate, but you
short straw.
But is that true? You're coming back?
We'll be back next week. Yes.
Wow. All right. I'm gonna have to have my A game going because your
viewers will be excited
for my brother's parking lot problem. So Joe, thanks for coming on the show, and to our viewers, thank you for watching the Citizen Mike Show. We like to produce these things on a Wednesday, have them up on YouTube by Wednesday night or maybe Thursday. WPAA broadcasts the Citizen Mike Show on Thursdays, Fridays, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at 9. And when we're in studio, we used to say, and we still can, hey, if it's 9 at night, it's Citizen Mike. Send me an email. I can, if you want, I can email links to the YouTube production, if that's more convenient for you. And Joe, see you next week. Good night, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Mike. See you next week.
Bye-bye.